Oh, but you know what? Mine has actually repeat sign.
Oh,
I could
was
do
like-
it though. I could do it.
no. I like it. Just keep moving along.
Oh yeah? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But big pulse here.
I was
right?
like, why is that? Yeah,
Sorry,
so
yeah.
just a pause. Yeah, I'm brain dead. Okay.
No.
And then the other one is,
Okay, that's yeah.
let's run through it once.
1064. Yeah. Oh, good, yeah, because I don't play melody here at all. Lead it to you.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land hard to say. I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Okay, they're gonna slow this down.
Oh, really?
Just doing being a little bit slower. Walking motion like we are.
Okay.
And then, but just don't be surprised if,
I see.
So I'll tune into you, you turn into me.
Okay.
and
Okay.
But how we start is a little fast for those words.
Better?
Dun, 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 dun. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making a way by the lights of the heavens and the beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great wind surging beyond, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
And I'll just. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me mark those. This goes up though.
Oh my gosh, you nailed it. Well, I mean.
Okay. 1064 and 1060. What was that first one? Sorry.
1068, rising green.
that the first one in the service? So they're just both out of the teal, not the gray.
Right, yeah.
Good.
Oh.
She has way more confidence. She has all figured out.
Yes, we printed 50.
Still have 15 more minutes. Oh my goodness, this is actually very nice. It looks really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, the color. I remember you have a thing. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Anyway, so, but I didn't want to hit them on my birthday party. Just a pattern.
Oh, I see.
So I have like 5 different foam fabrics.
Oh, that's good. So far, all the clothes that I got, it just doesn't fit me. Yeah. Oh, you did. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you have to return it. Yeah.
But you're right, quality sometimes is.
Oh, no, not that. I mean, I can't afford it. But anyway, yeah, like, yeah, I just,
This is beautiful.
well, I tried it on before I purchased it. I knew. But see, like, online, sometimes I wear it and I'm like, it's different from what I would. But this is, I just don't wear it. Yeah. This and yeah.
So where is it?
It ended up, it stood there. Okay. Oh, no, no worries. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, wow.
She's like, I got 2 girls at school. I really do think I'm going through a growth spurt. And the boys, I can tell. I've got 2 girls. So we were at least eye level. Which usually happens, you know. But then they leave talking.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Don Strickland, and it is truly my pleasure to welcome you, to have you here today to celebrate the life of Robert Bob Rake. Of course, we celebrate in this place because Bob knew Westside to be his beloved community. You are the family and friends with whom Bob felt most welcome. And so it is with genuine gratitude that I extend a heartfelt welcome to you as we remember and honor and commemorate Bob's life. As we begin, I want to offer a gentle reminder to please silence all cell phones. Also, allow me to, in anticipation of the wonderful things you're going to say, the honest things you're going to say, the great things you're going to say, to let you know that there will be a part in the service where you, friends and community, will be invited to come forward and speak if you would like to do so. There's a microphone up here in the front. It is a unidirectional microphone, so I'm told that you really have to speak directly into the microphone. So please take this time to think about a story you may want to tell, an anecdote you may want to share. Whether this is your first time to visit Westside, or if you consider Westside your home for fellowship, to both newcomers and old friends alike, together we say, welcome. Please make yourselves comfortable during this prelude performed by Yuki Kumamoto.
George Odell once noted, "We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted. When we're in trouble and afraid. When we despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone. In the hour of our successes, when we look for someone to share our triumphs. In the hour of our defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again. We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey. All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us. A flame within a chalice, a cup with a stem and foot, represents the Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA, and is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice is a symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this church today. Our lighting chalice words are written by Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Our opening hymn this morning is Rising Green, number 1068 in the Teal hymnal. Please stand as you are willing and able.
I invite you to remain standing as you join us in the non-doctrinal affirmation that brings us together. It's printed in your bulletin. Love is the doctrine of this church, and service is its prayer. dwell together in peace, seek knowledge and freedom, serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant. We have special music played today by Jeff Canclini and Tiffany Manigault. And they are playing, you may be seated, they are playing a very special song, and the reason it's so special is because Bob played this song for Debbie on their very first date. The song is by Joan Baez, and I'm sure in pure Bob style, it's titled, I Am a Rake and a Ramblin' Boy.
Well, I'm a rake and rambling boy. There's many a city I did enjoy. And now I married me a pretty little wife. And I love her dearer than I love my life. Oh, she was pretty, both neat and gay. Caused me to rob the broad highway. Oh yes, I robbed it, I do declare. And I got myself 10,000 bail. Well, I'm a rake and rambling boy. There's many a city I did enjoy. And now I married me a pretty little wife. And I love her dearer than I love my life. Oh, when I die, don't bury me at all. Place my bones in alcohol. And at my feet, place a white snow dove to tell the world I died for love. Well, he was a rake and a rambling boy. Many a city he did enjoy, but now he's married me this pretty little wife, and he loved me dearer than he loved my life. And I loved her dearer than I loved my life.
Jeff and Tiffany, thank you both so much. We want to make sure we provide an opportunity for friends and for community members to come up and share stories. So I invite you at this time, family members, we have a time set aside for you in just a moment, but I invite you at this time, if you are a member of the community, a friend of Bob's, please come forward to the microphone and feel free to share.
I had to fix the mic anyway, so this is perfect. I remember I got to joke around and make music with Bob when we had a small kind of jam session, Guitar 101 class. And we all got together, and I brought my son, and later we got to buy a guitar from Bob, and music was still carried on, and my son still loves to make music, and it was just such a joyful event. It got everything, it ticked all the boxes. He could tell stories, which he absolutely loves to do, and then make music and be surrounded by friends and laugh and give us all a hard time.
learned something very sweet. Back to dinner. I was talking to Debbie on the phone one evening, and she told me that he was calling her to the window to look out at the bird feeder. They had a bird feeder that Bob had put in the back right by the window so that they could watch the birds. And as Bob got older, he would keep calling her to the window to see the birds eating. He'd forget that he had just called her 5 minutes before, and she said, well, just a minute, let me tell Bob that I'll be there. And it was just the sweetest voice that Debbie had in reassuring him that she was going to come and see the birds again. So when we've been working on creating a garden in the back of our church, we needed to designate a spot where we would have a number of bird feeders, and it seemed appropriate that it be done in memory of Bob. Not finished yet, but there will be a number of different kinds of bird feeders, and we will remember him, and he will expect us to keep it filled.
I'm Karen Moore, and I had the privilege of leading a covenant group 2 years ago, and Bob was a member of the group along with Gary Randall, so you can imagine that we had a really good time when we got together. But my main and most fond memory of Bob is that every time we met, he would, and it was his turn to speak, he would always say, I've just always tried to be happy. I've always tried to do my best and to just be happy. And every time we would get ready to leave Covenant Group, he would say, everybody, go be happy. And so that's my fondest memory of him.
The very first time that I happened to find Westside UU, I came in, it was in the summertime. I had appropriately dressed in a skirt and blouse. And I came around and there was a woman next to me, Rake, and he had on shorts and a t-shirt. And the t-shirt said, "Quilt Hero." Well, I knew I had found a place for me because I am a quilter as well. That's how I met Debbie and other people here who do and don't quilt. But that was my first experience, and it was a wonderful way to know you don't have to wear it. You don't have to dress up. And so I don't know that I've ever worn shorts. So it was Bob that welcomed me with his t-shirt. Forever grateful.
Being asked to give a friendly reminder to speak directly into the microphone for those who are listening online. And we're so grateful. Please continue.
I met Anyway, I met Bob, and Bob often shared stories that
but sometimes I saw it. It was very deep. But I do remember.
Well, I'm Bob Van, and I've been a member of the church for quite a while, and my memories kind of go along for a long period of time with Bob. Bob was our church treasurer for several years, and I served on the board with him. And Bob, of course, loved to fish, so we used to go out to East Texas to one of our members had a kind of a ranch out there, and he had it set up with a nice, beautiful lake. And Bob would take all the kids out there and help them fish, teach them how to do that. And it was just great. They seemed to really have a great time. Of course, early on, I think when I was fairly new here, we used to have dinners for 9. So we'd get together just in small groups to go meet, kind of get to know everybody a little bit better. And we had one at Bob and Debbie's house. He had a collection of lighters. That was his big thing at the time, or one of his things. So he showed those off to us. And we had a really nice time, nice dinner, and together. So it's been just kind of a long-standing thing with Bob here at the church, and in the forum in the morning, so many different things. He participated in so many things here at the church, was such a big part of it. And we just thoroughly enjoyed having him being a part of the whole thing.
So y'all might be wondering, my name is Jana Kennard, and I'm actually a pretty new member. It feels like it. I joined in about 2018, or we started visiting in 2018 and joined in 2019, and then the pandemic. But what I remember walking in was Debbie and Bob were on the greeting committee, and Debbie came right up. They were so kind, and it was always Bob's smile. He never didn't have a smile on his face. From that Sunday forward, he always had a smile. And I also, like Diane mentioned, I joined more meditation before I had joined the church. But he was always there with his stories and his smile and his promise to always be happy. And anyhow, it will always carry with me that Bob Rake smile. And I try, when I'm here, to carry that through. Even though I'm also a crier, y'all, so you'll learn that too. But I always try to carry the Bob Rake smile with me.
I want to take a minute to invite Robert and Joseph Rake to please come forward, who will be sharing stories from family and friends that could not be here today.
Okay. First story I have is from Amelia Rake, Bob's granddaughter, 17 years old. One memory I have of my grandfather took place when I was around 6 years old. Grandpa had the biggest sweet tooth you could ever imagine. My grandmother, however, cared very much about healthy foods. Naturally, my grandfather would look for every excuse he could find to go out and enjoy some ice cream, and having a 6-year-old granddaughter visiting was the perfect excuse. So we went to this ice cream place. Grandpa was driving kind of fast, and he was singing 60s boy band songs at the top of his lungs. While I giggled in the passenger seat, he let me ride in the front seat, which is a pretty big deal for a kid. I remember him singing, "Do You Want to Dance?" and "You Baby." We both got giant sundaes. We sat in the shade in an attempt to beat the Texas heat and enjoyed our treats. Grandpa always saw sweets as a great excuse for family bonding, because if there's one thing sweeter than a big spoonful of ice cream, it's spending time with the people you love.
I'm going to share a memory of my own before I read from the script. Until I was 6 and my brother was 8, we lived in a suburb of Chicago called Bolingbrook. And my dad commuted an hour back and forth to work until Mom and Dad got sick of it and moved us to a tiny town in southwest Iowa. Shortly thereafter, my dad got a job as an auditor, and while he was auditing, he noticed some things that, didn't exactly look proper. His boss asked him to, just kind of brush those bad numbers under the table. My father refused and was fired for standing up for what he believed in. That would have been a scary situation for a lot of people, being in a new town and, having a family to support. But he stuck by his guns. He and my mom built their own business from the ground up and were successful enough to put both of us through college, even though he probably would have preferred putting us through a wall.
Before I continue with the next one, I do have one of my own as well. Dad was a bit of an underdog in the early going. He had a lot of odds stacked up against him. For those of you that didn't know him the longest, he started out in South Side Chicago, which is pretty much a ghetto neighborhood where you don't want to walk at night. And he didn't have a lot of wealth, and he wasn't the most book smart, he wasn't academically successful, but he did graduate high school, he did get on to Illinois State, and he did get a bachelor's degree and eventually went on to get a master's. And he did eventually start his own business from ground zero. 10 years later, within 10 years, it was a very big operation. And he rewarded himself quite graciously with it, and he always had a very competitive spirit, and he was always and he was, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say, but he overcame the odds. So that's something that I've always admired about him. But moving on to the next story, from Billy, the daughter of a dear friend. Growing up in Shenandoah, Bob and Debbie were both good friends of my mom's. I'm not sure I remember a time in my life that Bob and Debbie were not around, which means I have a lot of memories to choose from. I have many memories of spending time at the community playhouse, hanging around as my mom and Bob and or Debbie practiced for upcoming shows. One of the first shows I recall is A Funny Thing Happened at the Way to the Forum, which featured Bob as the canny and crass pseudolus, who in the end walks away with the beautiful Amazonian and former courtesan played by Debbie. A couple of my brothers would mow for Bob each summer, and I was so excited when I was old enough to do the same. After mowing for several summers and realizing I was still getting paid the same amount my brothers had been paid many years earlier, I decided it was time to ask for a raise. Bob was a tough negotiator, but it was a good learning experience, and I walked away with a $1 an hour increase. I still enjoy a good haggle or negotiation. I remember Bob telling me during my high school years that I should be a lawyer. I did not go that route, but hearing someone aim so high for me was so encouraging. When I think of Bob and Debbie, I think of their smiling faces, their generosity, and the playful banter they always seem to have with each other and with everyone around them. It was always a good time when I got to spend it with Bob and Debbie. I consider myself very fortunate and grateful to have had their support as I was growing up.
From Bob and Barb, mentors and friends. I always thought of Bob as one of my brothers. We were both raised in an Irish Catholic family, so we had a lot in common. I remember Bob in my daily prayers. Barbara and I have always felt it a privilege to have you and Bob as part of our lives. Thinking about what we would say about Bob's life brought back so many memories of trips, magic theater, and dining out, like a horse carriage ride in the snow in the old market. We say to ourselves often, we sure wish the Rakes were here to go out to dinner with. Bob had a lot of challenges in his life, and he took them head on. This is what we admired about him. We know that Bob's spirit will be there with you that day.
Okay, this is from Erin, Bob's favorite niece. I absolutely adored my Uncle Bob, and I miss him very much. He has always held a special place in my heart, and I know I held one in his. Once the movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial came out, I was no longer known to him as Aaron or Aaron Therese. I was always E.T. or E.T. Phone Home. When I got married, I wanted him to be part of the ceremony and asked him to perform 2 Bible verse readings. When it was time for the second reading, he was so engrossed with videotaping the ceremony that there was a noticeable delay before he jumped up and quick walked to the podium. Everyone chuckled. When I became pregnant with my son Dean, it was already decided that my Uncle Bob and Aunt Debbie were going to be his Grandpa Bob and Nana Deb. The last time we got to see my uncle, he took Dean to his water aerobics class. When they got home, my uncle and I had a conversation along the lines of, does Dean know that I'm not really his grandpa, that I'm really his great uncle? I replied that yes, Dean does know. He was quite relieved with that because he had introduced Dean to the fellow water aerobics attendees as his grandson, and I was getting told how much my son looked like him, and he was worried that Dean would be confused. It was very sweet.
From Ellen, a longtime friend. First of all, I've seen Ted Turner in a captain's hat, and Leslie Nielsen, and Thurston Howell III, and I swear I have never seen a man look better and more at home than Bob Rake in his captain's hat. With that great big aw shucks grin on his face, it is my lasting image of him. But my favorite Bob was the Hershey Kiss melt-away Bob when he dealt with or even talked about his little girls. Erin, Amelia, Sophia, Billy, and Molly have to attest that Uncle Bob was the biggest softy in the world. To see him playing with his little girls was to see uncompromising love in its finest manifestation. He was a big marshmallow when it came to the girls. He loved them and they loved him. Farewell, Uncle Bob. We will not see your like again.
Okay, this is from Karen, whom we met in college. I have known Bob and Debbie since our college days at Illinois State University. Bob was a jolly Irish guy from Chicago. I told people he was my brother and they believed me. Bob and Debbie introduced me to Ed, who became my husband the next year. My husband died young, but he was a fabulous match. Bob was an excellent matchmaker. Over time, miles kept us apart. When we did connect, we picked up where we left off. That is a sign of solid friendship. Ed always said Bob was like a brother. I think he felt closer to Bob than his own brothers. Bob was always fun to be around and kept us laughing. I did notice he had a little extra baggage around his midsection, so I gave him the name of Chubby Buttons. He thought it was funny and wore the new name proudly. Well, I like to think Ed and Bob are together now. I bet they are the best buds. We will always love Bob.
From Bob, Ellen's husband. My favorite memories of Bob are acting together on stage in Front Page. I was Diamond Louie. Our trip to Fremont for the Mystery Dinner Train. I just watched the Chicago Bears come from behind to win the season opener and thought of Bob.
From Dean, Bob's grandson, quote unquote, 14 years old. My Grandpa Bob was the #1 guy for best grandpa ever. He was always so loving and open towards people and was always there to cheer you up. My grandpa was so funny and loved spending time with his family. I always loved reading the newspaper and watching sports with him. Grandpa Bob and Nana Deb's house always smelled like Buttercup. For those of you that don't know, that's the dog. Okay. I remember all the amazing childhood memories with him. I loved how every time we visited, we always went to Brahms for ice cream. Looking back on tons of those old memories makes me feel so glad to have such an amazing family with an amazing grandpa.
From Bobby, a longtime friend. I have known Debbie since kindergarten. That's 71 years. My favorite memory is when Bob and Debbie visited my husband and me in Alexandria, Virginia, and we were trying to get to the Kennedy Center to see Guys and Dolls. I was flipping out about our failure to navigate smoothly and being late for the performance, but Bob was calm, cool, and collected as he issued soothing comments from the back seat. When I told Debbie about this memory, she said, "Are you sure that was Bob?" And from Elizabeth, Bob's sister, who to me will always be Aunt Bet. Bob, my brother. Now he knows where I got that word. We were born less than 2 years apart, and we're not only siblings, but friends forever. Bob could be bossy and I could be mean, but despite our many differences, we got along, mostly, and liked each other, mostly. Bob taught me how to ride a bicycle while he was still on crutches from one of his many, just pausing to make sure there was only 4, misadventures. I remember that after I fell from the bike for the 44th time, I'm sure it was at least that many times, that I kicked the tire and called the bike unflattering names. I thought for sure that he was going to yell at me for kicking his bike, but he laughed and said, "Kick it again, yell at it, then kick it again before you get back on and ride it." That's what I did. Thanks, brother. He taught me the basics of driving a car. He let me use his portable stereo when he went away to college. Took over the little acoustical guitar that I bought him on a whim and restrung it for himself. He was left-handed. And taught himself how to play it, although Deb and the boys probably didn't always appreciate his musical prowess. Spoiler alert, Aunt Bet, we did. Oh yes, he introduced me to Deb, my friend and sister. Thanks, brother. Bob spent a lot of time in his life kicking tires and cars and habits and overcoming injuries and illnesses and taking things apart and putting things back together, making friends and bettering himself. He was always up for a challenge or just a new experience or adventure or hobby. He didn't always succeed, but he never stopped trying. I love you, brother, and will miss you forever, but you will live on in all of us, won't you? Thanks, brother. Love from your baby sister, Betty Annie.
Robert and Joseph, thank you. There's this love of singing and song that seems to touch so many of the stories about Bob. And as we come together to celebrate, how do we not also grieve? Bob's life itself you can tell from all the stories, was a song filled with vitality. And there's something deeply wrong with a world that gives us this heart so capable of loving deeply, loving strongly those that will ultimately one day leave us. There's a poem by Robert Frost called A Minor Bird, and it has this line at its conclusion. It says, "Of course there must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song." And if there's anything certain about Bob Rake, it is that music, or song, was one of his deepest passions. Stories reveal how much music made him feel connected, made him feel most alive and most open to others. Song brought him a special kind of joy. Whether it was his activity in local community theater that he shared with the whole family, or special events like the one named the production of Funny Thing Happened on the way to Forum, they seem to shine a light on Bob's sense of humor, on his courage, on his playfulness. And I had to laugh when Debbie admitted that nobody really cared, quote, that his singing wasn't the best, because he enjoyed it so much. And that kind of enthusiasm was contagious. It's echoes of Frost. There must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song. You've heard stories that Bob was a self-made man. He grew up on the south side of Chicago in a place where there was no expectation whatsoever that he should ever make anything of himself. And yet, unlike so many of his Chicago friends, against all of the forces that seem rallied to keep people in their stations in life, Bob found a way. He worked his way into college. He got his bachelor's, he got his master's. There was something more that he demanded of himself, and not only for himself. He wanted to spend every day with someone who was also educated. Education, among other things, was a means of making life better. It was a way of making life fuller. So he did eventually complete his master's degree. He earned his CPA. He ran his own successful business. Courage. If music were a metaphor for Bob, he rose above his circumstances because he refused to do anything other than dance to the beat of his own drum. Of the stories I've heard about Bob, he is well known to be an adventurer. You have probably been regaled with stories that include intentionally sailing into a hurricane. What? Ask Debbie. To hear Debbie tell it, he owned a cabin cruiser, he owned sailboats, he owned RVs, and he had some sort of disastrous adventure to tell about every single one of them. He loved Ernest Hemingway's book, The Old Man and the Sea, which was a story of a man who battled the elements to catch a giant marlin. And that fictional story seems to capture so much of Bob's spirit of adventure. I wonder if it's too much to say that he actively sought out ways to be tested. And when those moments came, he reveled in them. He loved them. He thrived in crisis because he loved the adventure of it all. not surprising then that he and Debbie enjoyed so much exploration of the world, traveling to distant places, Paris, Rome, London, Barbados, all the while music and song serving as a thread that tied the journey together. Bob played guitar, he loved karaoke, and when Debbie talks about meeting Bob, as you've all learned, it's not long before she admits two things. Their first date was a blind date, and Joan Baez's I Am a Rake took on a very special meaning for them. Again, Robert Frost tells it so well. There must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song. You can tell from the stories how deeply missed Bob is. No one wanted to silence Bob's song, yet time comes for all of us. The time when our song grows quiet. Time places boundaries on our lives, as if it would silence the music that is our passion and our voice and our vitality. There must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song, and yet here we are, gathering to remember and to celebrate a voice that has gone silent. The celebration of life is not an attempt to neglect all the pained and broken parts in order to highlight only good. Rather, a celebration of life is an admission that taken all in all, both the frustrations and the fulfillments, Bob's life is worth honoring. Bob's absence continues to be deeply felt. Bob was and continues to be deeply loved. And you can tell from the stories that he nurtured and grew love in everyone he touched. And so it is with gratitude that we celebrate all the ways that Bob's song lives on in you. Let it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
Please join together in our closing hymn today, Blue Boat Home, number 1064 in your teal hymnal. Please stand as you are able.
Standing on
closing words today are by Carl G. Seberg. Between the dawn and dusk of our being, let us be brave and loving. In our little passage through the light, let us sustain and forward the human venture. In gentleness, in service, and in thought, let it be so. Blessed be, and amen. The chalice is now extinguished, but its light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each one of you. Carry that flame with you as you leave this place and share it with those you know, with those you love, and most especially with those you have yet to meet. And please join me now in the congregational closing. It's printed in your order of service. Go in peace, seeking justice. Go in peace, committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. Go in the peace that is created when, together, we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace. And please join us. There's a reception in our fellowship hall, and we'd love to keep telling stories about Bob.
So much you ended up being.
Good.